I thought staying quiet would keep the peace, but the silence has eaten me alive. Years of guilt, secrets, and someone I swore I loved. Now I can't tell if I destroyed them, or if they destroyed me first. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. I've been trapped in a relationship that feels less like love, and more like being held hostage. About 2 years ago my girlfriend dropped out of college. Ever since then she's spiraled into this shell of a person. And listen, I know it sounds harsh, but I'm just being real. I work 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, just to keep us afloat. Meanwhile she does absolutely nothing. Her excuse? She's too pretty to work. Can you believe that? Just today I came home from a brutal shift, walked through the door at around 6 in the evening, and what do I see? She's still in bed. The sheets crumpled around her, half-eaten takeout boxes scattered across the mattress, the smell of old food filling the room. She hadn't even bothered to shower or brush her teeth. The only time she'd gotten up all day was to collect her delivery from the front door. And I just snapped. After grinding myself into the ground all day, walking into that scene was the breaking point. I raised my voice, told her she can't keep living like this. And instead of hearing me out, she lashed out physically. Right then and there I wanted to break up with her. I was ready to end it. But she clung to me with this pathetic guilt trip, saying she had no one else in her life, nowhere to go. So what does she do? She crawls back into bed, sulking, while I'm left pacing around the house, my mind spinning. Hours later I walked back into her room and said the words I'd been holding in. I can't do this anymore. I don't care who you turn to, but I need to protect my own mental health. I cannot stay in this relationship. She tried again to guilt trip me, but when that didn't work, she bolted up, ran into the kitchen and grabbed a pair of scissors. She held them to herself and threatened to end it all if I left. My heart nearly stopped. I froze. I couldn't take the risk that she might actually follow through, so I caved. I told her I'd stay. She's sleeping right now, but I've already made up my mind. Tomorrow, if she tries that again, I'm walking away. If she chooses to go through with her threats, then that's on her. I can't live like this anymore. Update 1. Last night when we were both getting ready for bed, I didn't undress like I normally would. Instead, I just stood there, frozen in place, watching her bounce around on the mattress with this carefree grin, knees tucked up as she giggled like it was all some kind of game. At first she thought I wasn't serious. But eventually she caught on. The mood shifted and she realized this wasn't playful. This was real. I told her straight, something doesn't feel right anymore. I reminded her that for years I've been patient, waiting, hoping, thinking she'd go back to school or find a job or at least pick up a hobby. Anything to show she cared about herself. But nothing had changed. I admitted it eats away at me, seeing her live with no goals, no direction, no spark. And to my surprise, she actually listened. Not just half-hearted nodding, she was engaged. Focused. More attentive than I'd seen her in years. She even started throwing out ideas, naming places she could apply, talking about courses that interested her. She said I could sit beside her while she submitted applications online, just to prove she wasn't bluffing. For a moment I almost believed her. A part of me thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she'll finally turn things around. But deep down I knew I couldn't lie anymore, not to her and not to myself. I told her the truth, that I don't love her the same way anymore. At first I softened it. I said my feelings had changed, that something felt off. But eventually it all spilled out. I don't feel anything for this relationship anymore. I'm jaded. Worn down. I want a fresh start, with someone who has drive, who wants something more out of life. That's when she broke. Tears welled up instantly, streaming down her face as she asked why I hadn't told her sooner. I reminded her of all the times I'd begged her, asked her to cook with me, go out, try new things, take classes, anything. I even offered to pay. I'd been clear for years, she just never cared enough to act. She admitted she hadn't been in the right mental state. That nothing motivated her. She confessed she had no real hobbies, no genuine interests. The only thing she looked forward to every day was me coming home. That was it. I was her entire world. I felt uncomfortable. Numb even. I tried to push through, telling her maybe she'd be better suited with someone else. But she panicked, cut me off, begging through tears. She swore she could change. That tomorrow she'd go anywhere with me, start looking for classes, start building a future. She said she couldn't stand the thought of losing me, because without me she had nothing. The tears, the sobbing, the snot, it was overwhelming. Eventually I said we'd talk again once she calmed down. An hour later she was back, pleading for just 2 months. 2 months to prove she could change. She rattled off names of places she'd apply, promised over and over that she'd be different. I didn't want to make her homeless, so I agreed. But I also made it clear I want to see other people. That part she fought against harder than anything else. She begged me for just 1 month to fix our relationship, swearing she could win my love back, asking again and again what she could do to make me stay. She kept saying the worst part wasn't even me leaving, it was me hating her. That idea destroyed her. She was unraveling right in front of me. And I couldn't let her completely break down, not while I'm still living here. So I agreed. 1 month. 1 chance. In my mind it's already over. But maybe this month will give her enough time to accept it when the end comes. That night I slept on the couch. At 3 in the morning she crept out, wanting to talk again. I told her I was exhausted and we'd pick it up tomorrow. Instead she curled up on the floor beside me, wrapped in a blanket, sobbing quietly as she whispered apologies. And I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. My chest felt lighter, strangely enough. For the first time in years I wasn't bottling it all up. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but deep down I don't regret it. I've drawn the line. She has 1 month. And after that, we'll see where this goes. Update 2. Last night she came to me with this relationship exercise she'd seen on TikTok. Apparently, couples put a phone on the table, set a timer, and take turns saying what upsets them. She thought it would help us. I told her straight up, it sounded dumb. If we were going to be real about our problems, there shouldn't be a time limit. She thought about it and eventually agreed. Then she looked me dead in the eye and asked, "When did you completely lose your love for me?" That question hit me like a punch to the chest. But I answered honestly. I told her it wasn't one big moment. It was this slow, grinding disappointment that grew worse and worse until I reached this point. She nodded, then asked, "When were you the angriest with me?" I had to sit with that one. For a few minutes I just stared at the wall, trying to find the words. And then it came back to me, those early months when I first started at the hospital. The tempo was brutal. Non-stop work. No downtime. I was thrown into situations school had never prepared me for, expected to keep up like I'd been doing it for years. It was the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life. That year hardened me. It taught me that hard work and drive matter. They pay off. And coming home after those shifts, walking through the door, only to see her lounging in bed, scrolling endlessly with nothing to show for her time, that's when my feelings started draining the fastest. No dinner, no effort, no job, no growth. Just nothing. I told her how many times I'd offered suggestions, jobs with easy schedules, new programs at school, even hobbies she might enjoy. And every single time she shot them down. Flat out refused. And that disgusted me. She tried to push back, saying I should have told her it was such a big issue at the time. But I snapped back. Do you realize how insane that sounds? I shouldn't have to tell my partner to bathe, eat, or do literally anything other than scroll TikTok all day. That's basic human upkeep, not a relationship discussion. And truthfully, on those nights when the hospital drained every last ounce of me, the last thing I wanted was to come home and beg my girlfriend to do something, anything, productive. So I kept my mouth shut. Settled for, at least she's nice. And let the resentment fester. I admitted something I regret saying out loud. When she dropped nursing, I was disappointed. At first, I thought she had what it took to succeed. But over time, I realized she didn't have the grit. That's why I kept suggesting easier jobs, less demanding majors, anything to keep her moving forward. But she chose nothing. And that's why romantically I just checked out. She asked if I hated her. I said I didn't know. I told her she's loving and kind, but I hate how she's lived her life up to this point. I don't hold anger toward her, but I don't feel love either. I feel done. The whole time we kept eye contact. I watched her blink fast like she was holding back tears, but she stayed calm, at least on the surface. When I finished, I told her she could have her turn. But instead, she asked to postpone. Then she locked herself in our room the rest of the day. The next day, we picked it back up. She admitted she thinks she might be depressed. She said she didn't feel sad, just completely unmotivated. A few of you messaged me about ADHD testing, so I brought it up, but she shut that down immediately. Said she wasn't comfortable with that, hated hospitals, hated the idea of doctors. I tried to explain it wasn't like that, but she still refused. Then she asked me point blank, if I change, will you give me another chance? And I told her the truth again, I don't know. I feel nothing right now. I don't know if watching her change would reignite anything in me. Especially since it took me reaching my absolute breaking point for her to even attempt this. She begged for a compromise. I told her the same thing as before, if in a month I see a reason to stay, I will. But there are no guarantees. I'll match her effort, nothing more. She didn't like that answer. But later, she showed me a piece of paper she'd worked on the night before. A list of hobbies and interests, photography, cooking, and a few others. She even showed me her phone, where she'd been applying for entry-level positions on Indeed and Glassdoor. I told her this, if you can show genuine passion for any of these hobbies, I won't care about the job. Just do something. But if you do nothing, then you need to find a job to prepare yourself to move out. Some of you have asked if I have people I confide in. Truth is, I do. 2 female coworkers I deeply trust, grounded, level-headed women who see through the nonsense. They told me bluntly, I'm being love-bombed. This burst of effort won't last. They warned me I'd fall back into her cycle if I stayed, and even offered me their spare rooms if I needed to get away. I haven't taken them up on it yet, but I trust them. Their words stick with me. Despite so many of you telling me this is a mistake, I still want to give it one last try. But I'm guarded. Heavily. I feel indifferent to her now. Maybe that will change. Maybe not. Oh, and for those who suggested cutting off intimacy, that was already my plan. I've been sleeping in the living room from the start. But every night, she curls up on the floor right below me, sobbing softly, refusing to give me space. Even when I tell her I want to be alone with my thoughts, she won't accept it. Update 3. Last week, it was like my girlfriend had flipped a switch. Suddenly, she was bursting with energy, this manic wave of motivation I hadn't seen in years. She threw herself at every hobby under the sun, testing out anything that might stick. And like I promised, I met her halfway. If she tried, I'd try too. The one thing that seemed to hold her attention? Photography. Out of nowhere, she dug through her mountain of clothes, stuff she'd been hoarding for years, and started selling pieces on Depop. She managed to scrape together enough to buy a Canon 250D. Honestly, I don't know much about cameras, but she swore it was a good beginner's model. And here's what I noticed, the deeper she got into photography, the more she kept pulling me into it. Almost every day she'd ask me to go out into the city with her, snapping shots, testing settings, experimenting with angles. And since I told her I'd match her energy, I did it, even after 12-hour shifts that left me half dead on my feet. But it wasn't just the hobby that changed. Her entire personality seemed cranked up to maximum. She's always been affectionate, but last week? It was relentless. She'd ask me 8 times a day if I was upset, if I needed anything, if I wanted to do something together. Out in public, she clung to me, holding hands, kissing, practically glued to my side. And when I said I needed to head home early for work the next morning, she begged to stay out longer. I don't know if love bombing is exactly the right word, but that's sure what it felt like. This overwhelming flood of attention and energy, and in the back of my mind I was just waiting for the crash. And of course it came. By the second week, the exhaustion hit me hard. I could only take so much before I needed space. The truth is, even with her trying so hard, my feelings hadn't magically returned. I was still burned out. The only people I could really talk to about it were my coworkers. They've been my rock through all of this. I told them everything, every detail. And you know what they said? This is love bombing. She's proving our point. It won't last. They even asked me, what if you're still stuck with her after 2 months? I told them the one thing keeping me sane, my lease is almost up. That gives me an exit. A way out. They were worried about me though, said I was showing up to work more tired, dragging through shifts, not my usual self. They could see it. I brushed it off, told them I was fine. That weekend they insisted I come out with them. Said I needed to get out of that apartment, that spending too much time in that suffocating environment wasn't good for my head. At first I said no. But when they asked again the same day, I gave in. And honestly, I'm glad I did. We spent the day together and for the first time in weeks I felt myself breathe. I laughed. I enjoyed myself. My mood lifted. Naturally, my girlfriend noticed I'd been gone all day. When I got home, she asked where I'd been. I told her the truth, that I was out with friends. She looked disappointed, but I promised her we'd spend the entire next day together. And then, the messages started rolling in. People telling me I should cut my friends off immediately. That they're manipulating me. That they're twisting my decisions. But here's the thing, I know these people. They're not manipulators. They're the ones who helped me quit smoking earlier this year, something that's been brutal on my anxiety, but life-changing for my health. These aren't bad influences. These are people I trust with my life. And after everything we've been through at the hospital together, that kind of trust? It's unshakable. Update 4. I said the crash would come, and I was right. It wasn't just a dip in energy, it was ugly, loud, and left me shaken. Looking back, maybe it could have been prevented if I'd handled things differently. But in that moment, I wasn't in the right headspace myself. I'll admit something I'm not proud of, I picked up smoking again. Not much, but enough. And as bad as that sounds, it helped me hold it together when I felt like I was about to mentally collapse. I didn't even tell my coworkers about it, I didn't want them stepping in again. It started with one of our outings. When we got home, she told me I'd been dismissive, that I seemed angry. I told her the truth, that I was just drained. I explained how suffocating it felt having her constantly clinging to me for reassurance, still sleeping in the living room every night, never giving me a moment alone. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. That crushed her. She withdrew, barely spoke for 2 days, just brooded in silence. Maybe I should have apologized. Maybe I should have explained better. But instead, I took the rare chance to rest, nap, and just be alone. Something I hadn't had in weeks. And then came the 3rd day. The day everything exploded. That morning, I left for work without saying goodbye. I was running late and honestly, it slipped my mind. Normally, I at least check in with her. But she'd been isolating in the bedroom for days, so I just left. At the hospital, I felt great for once. Rested, relaxed, even cheerful. When my coworkers invited me out after shift, I finally said yes. A couple drinks later, I rolled home around 9 at night in good spirits. But when I opened the door, she was sitting in the living room. No phone. No TV. Just sitting there in silence, staring at me as I walked in. It startled me. I asked what she was doing and she just looked through me. Then came the questions. Where were you? With friends, I said. From work? Yes. Were you drinking too? I told her the truth, yes. The silence after that stretched like a blade. Then, in a voice tight with emotion, she asked the question I wasn't ready for. It's been almost a month. Have your feelings changed? I hesitated. I told her I appreciated the effort she'd been putting in, but I was still unsure. I couldn't give her the answer she wanted. That's when she broke. Her voice cracked as she accused me of being dismissive, of not putting in the same effort she was. I pushed back, told her I'd been going out with her whenever she asked, matching her energy on hobbies, doing my part. To me, it felt like she was just being needy. But then her words tumbled out, jagged and raw. She said I never smiled when we were out, that I was quiet, distant, that I didn't even look like I wanted to be there. She admitted she was constantly overthinking, terrified, wondering if I'd ever love her again. I told her again all she needed to do was find a passion, anything, and live for herself. But she said it's been 2 weeks, she's pushed herself as hard as she could and nothing's changed. My mood hasn't lifted. My feelings haven't come back. And now the month was almost up. Then came the meltdown. She sobbed, screamed, pleaded. Her voice was shredded as she told me how much she loves me, how much affection she's poured into me, only for me to throw it away over stupid conditions. She asked if I ever really loved her. She said she had no one else. That if I left there would be no future, no reason to live. She said she wouldn't make it without me. I froze. I'd never seen her like that before. She wasn't just crying, she was collapsing. Her body shook as she screamed through tears, almost incoherent, telling me it would all be over if I walked away. And then she locked herself in the bedroom. For days she refused to see me. When I knocked, she screamed at me to go away. And I did. When she finally emerged, her attitude was completely different. Still upset, yes, but calm. Apologetic. She told me she didn't mean half the things she said, that it was just the moment overtaking her. By then though, something inside me had shifted. I'd had time to think. To breathe. To imagine life without this constant storm. So I told her, gently but firmly, it's over. I said I'd give her 2 months to find her footing. That I'd help her get on her feet, and after that I'd be gone. She cried again, but this time it wasn't rage, it was defeat. Quiet, resigned tears. She agreed. And then, something unexpected happened. She found a job. Part-time at a supermarket, but it was a start. From that moment we barely spoke. She worked, then hid in her room. I stayed on the couch, which honestly I'd gotten used to. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Happy, even. I didn't tell my coworkers I'd officially broken up. I just kept things vague. But I started going out more after work, not dreading the apartment as much. For a moment I felt on top of the world again. And then my body betrayed me. One morning it hit like a truck, I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they'd collapsed to half capacity. Deep breaths turned into coughing fits. The fatigue was brutal. Turns out it wasn't a cold. It was pneumonia. For 2 weeks I was knocked flat. Sleeping 12 to 14 hours a day, barely able to stand. I had to use an inhaler just to get air into my chest. When she saw me like that, pale and wheezing, she offered me the bedroom back. I refused. She respected it for a few days. But then she started checking on me. Asking if I'd eaten. Bringing food. And when I tried to hand her my card for groceries, she refused. Bought them herself. Cooked for me even when I said I didn't want anything. At first it felt awkward. Wrong. Like my sickness had forced us into contact I didn't want. But as the days went on, it changed. She began sitting with me, telling me about work, her coworkers, little stories she'd been holding in. Things she'd wanted to say for weeks but hadn't had the chance. And once she started, she didn't stop. I found myself listening. Actually enjoying her voice. It grew into watching TV together on sleepless nights, then deeper talks, about us, about our mistakes, about everything we'd bottled up. There was no yelling this time. Just listening. One night I was too sick to move, coughing until I shook. She stayed with me. Sat by my side the whole day, making sure I ate, drank water, didn't collapse completely. No words. Just presence. I can't put into words what those 2 weeks did to me. It gave me time to think. To reflect. To wonder. Now that I've recovered, our conversations feel lighter. More natural. I don't force it. She doesn't force it. We just talk. She tells me about customers at the store, annoying coworkers, little victories. And in return I tell her about my shifts, my patience, my stress. Slowly we've drifted into something that feels less like lovers and more like friends. And strangely it works. But make no mistake, there's still a barrier between us. A wall that went up during that last ugly fight. I can't explain it, but it's there. And the clock is ticking. The lease ends in September. That's my deadline. Update 5. The end of September came faster than I expected. My lease was about to expire and I knew in my heart I wasn't renewing it. I needed out. I needed a fresh start, far away from her, and far away from the ghosts of our relationship. For weeks I'd been wrestling with the decision. And yes, I was grateful for those fleeting moments of connection we shared while I was sick. But deep down I knew I couldn't stay in this cycle any longer. So on the last Saturday of the month I told her. Calm, steady, rehearsed. I said, it's time for me to go. I need to focus on myself and my future. Living together, it's just not an option anymore. Her face changed instantly. At first confusion, then heartbreak. Then fury. Tears streamed down her face as she accused me of abandoning her. She screamed that I didn't care, that I was throwing away everything we'd been through, that I was walking out for no reason. I tried to hold my ground to keep my voice calm, but her words cut deep. I told her this wasn't about abandoning her, it was about survival. I had to take care of myself. But her emotions only spiraled. Her voice cracked. Her hands trembled. The pain in her eyes twisted into something darker. And then it happened. In one sudden, blinding moment she lunged. I didn't see it coming. Her hand struck across my face before I could react. The sound, the sting, it left me stunned. I stumbled back, clutching my cheek, adrenaline roaring in my veins. The room went dead silent. She froze, her anger instantly collapsing into panic. Her eyes went wide. Her voice shook as she stammered apologies, but I wasn't hearing it. All I felt was betrayal. I left the room, my heart pounding, my body trembling with shock. I paced, unable to breathe, unable to think. And finally I walked out. I got in my car and drove with no destination, just trying to escape the walls that had caged me for so long. Somewhere along the way I called a friend. My voice was shaking and they insisted I head to the hospital. So that's where I ended up, sitting under the sterile lights of the waiting room, my face still burning, my chest tight with shame, confusion, and rage. The doctors checked me out. Physically I was fine. But emotionally? They told me to take it seriously. To think hard about what had just happened. I sat there for hours. Silent. Turning everything over in my head. Every argument. Every plea. Every tear. And finally I knew what I had to do. When I left the hospital I pulled out my phone and typed one last message. My fingers shook as I pressed each word. I told her I wouldn't press charges. I wasn't going to drag this further. But I was done. Completely done. I told her to stay away from me forever. That she had a lifeline now, but it was hers to use, not mine. I wanted no more contact. No more guilt. No more chances. And then I hit send. And just like that, it was over. The next day I packed my things. Box by box I stripped the apartment of my life. The memories. The arguments. The fleeting good moments and all the poison in between. And when I closed that door for the very last time, I didn't look back. It was finally over. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.